procedures for the Q&A session. I've got the list of folks who signed up to ask questions. When you're recognized, come up to the podium and ask your question. Each person will get 5 minutes to start with. Then after everyone has their turn, we'll go through the list again and you can have more time. And this session will last an hour. Hey, that's yours. Okay, we'll start the clocks when the question is asked, and then just to introduce the folks that are on the panel. Brian Payne is on my far right. He's the lead architect from Moseley Architects. Tony Pettit is the project manager from BurWil, and I'm the county mayor. I'll moderate everything. We'll start with Karen Arwood. Karen, you're the first one.
Okay. I have to give my
No.
Karen Arwood. No, the biggest thing is just to go back to the very, very beginning of all of this, which I understand you just recently came on when you bid for the overseeing. So we
At 95% drawings, I came up with.
Oh, okay. All right. The biggest thing is that for Moseley, have you ever designed or have any familiarity with a jail, or do you understand when you hear some of us talk about and that we've actually been to the jail in Coffee County? Are you familiar with that design?
Yes, I am familiar with it.
Okay.
I have not seen it in person, but I am
But
familiar
you are
with it.
familiar with the design?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, and I take it are you? No, not familiar with the, okay. Because big thing, and just one thing, and I had hoped that Commissioner would have asked, but as far as the micropiles or your support, there would be somewhat of a difference or reduction if it was one floor versus the four complete floors.
Potential. This is a heavy construction.
Sure.
With whether it's 1 story or 3 story, it's still a heavy construction.
Well, it's going
And it also-
to be considerably heavier if you go up 3.
True, I'll give you that. But it also depends on where you would site buildings. Depending on the soil conditions, where you would site that building.
Plus, your pad is this confined when you got all your square footage going up here, you spread out, depending on where the soil is, but the micropile spread out. I mean,
Well, I understand.
that's dictated by the
I mean,
geotechnical.
it would be spread out over an area versus concentrated. It wouldn't be necessarily as deep, possibly,
Right.
if it was spread out. That's, and you're gonna have
Depends on the site.
It depends, yes, I understand that. That's what I wanted and the whole reason of asking. If you were familiar with the design for Coffee County, what is the overall dislike or discontent towards even considering? Or does this all go back, Mayor Britton? My understanding from the get-go that we're getting a jail and justice center along what you designed what he told you to design, correct?
For the record, we didn't design Coffee County. I'm familiar with the floor.
I'm saying
I'm
for
familiar with
us,
the floor plan.
yeah.
What we have designed is something that we are familiar with, that we've used multiple places before. It's a design that we feel works. It's a design that we feel is safe and works for the needs of
Okay.
Hamlin County.
Are there existing jails similar?
Yes, there are.
I mean, very, very similar.
Yes, there are.
Here nearby?
There are some in North Carolina. I do not know if there's any here in Tennessee, but I do know some.
Well, I mean, even after this is over and done with, if I would be willing to travel to North Carolina myself and see one comparable.
Sure.
for what you're proposing. Because I've seen in Coffee County, and that's why I wanted to ask if nobody seems to want to even look at between what you're designing and what Coffee County's got. What are the pros and cons between the two? Because we know for a fact that 3 separate pods, two housing inmates and one for the sheriff's department was 1/3 the cost of what we're looking at. And our main problem initially was, we need a new jail. I don't know where in the world we ever came up with throwing in a ridiculously cosmetic, beautiful justice center. I'm sorry, I could care less about cosmetics. Functionality and what we need. And keep the cost way down from what we're spending, or looking at spending right now. Thank you.
Daryl, you're next, Daryl.
First question for debt service, is your company located in the state of Tennessee?
Our company is not located in the state of Tennessee, sir.
Okay. Who set up for your company to have individual meetings with each county commissioner?
When were you talking about? When?
May 2020.
One-on-one, about 30-minute meeting with each one.
We set it up.
Your office set it
We
up?
set it up.
Okay, sir. Well, how are we supposed to believe anything that comes out of your office or yours when you flagrantly come in here and violate our state law on the Open Meetings Act and discuss county business?
That was not a violation.
Okay, sir, hold on. Now, let me finish. You did have a meeting, you did discuss county business. You can split hairs however you want to there. The way I read the law, it seems pretty simple. You should not have been having them individual meetings. It should have been conducted in public. And you've destroyed the people's trust over here. You should have known better. You should have looked into the state laws here and known better. And every one of these commissioners that met with you should have known better. If you didn't know better, you want to claim ignorance of the law, first thing the Supreme Court will tell you, ignorance of the law is no excuse. And you're not going to get us believing you when you're trying to do something behind closed doors, secretive from the public, because it's our money you're spending. And we have the right to know what's being discussed and how it's being spent.
Bonnie Bloomington is next.
Hello, and I would like to thank you for coming tonight and hopefully shine some light on some of our concerns. Mr. Arwood asked a question about the separate meetings you came and had with 10 of the commissioners. And my question is, why? Why have 10 separate meetings with 10 different commissioners at 10 different times when you knew the meeting, the public meeting was coming right up? And it looks to me like it would have been so much more effective and less time consuming to have met here in this public meeting. See, when stuff like that happens, it doesn't look good. That makes us think that things are being kept from us. And then the second part of that question is, why were 4 commissioners not privy to these meetings? There's just a whole lot about this that screams hidden agenda. I don't know whose idea it was. I don't know the why behind it, but I really do have an issue, and I really would like an explanation on why you had to meet that way instead of meeting here in the public. Thank you.
Hold on, Bonnie. Let me ask you a question and then I'll answer yours. Who were the 4 that did not meet Who were the 4 commissioners that did not?
Did you meet
He's
one?
taking up your time.
Okay, then,
He's taking up your time. I just
Oh,
need
Who were
to.
the 4?
well, I don't know. But I was told that there were 4,
No.
but,
Here's what happened.
well, okay,
Here-
if they did all 14, still yet, why sneak into town, have these sneaky meetings when it could have been right here in the public, in front of everybody?
The meetings were one-on-one with the commissioners and the Moseley team. They were scheduled a day of a public meeting. The public meeting happened that night. It was to give the commissioners more time, one-on-one with the design team, for the design team to give an explanation of where we were with the project, and give the commissioner an opportunity to ask one-on-one with the design team, have any questions. So it was an opportunity to give the county commissioners, your all's representatives, more time with the design team, one-on-one, and to ask the questions that, ask their questions and get more information than might have been communicated in the public meeting. Then a public meeting followed those. That's what happened on that day. And all 14 commissioners were invited, and at least 12, 13 of them met one-on-one, if not all 14.
Well, I heard there was 4. I mean, you can, I realize you couldn't hear anything. So I do thank you for clearing that up.
Okay, Linda Noyes next.
I'll make mine rather rapid fire. Does the estimate you gave today include furniture, fixtures, and equipment?
The numbers I showed did not reflect that.
Does it include your total fee?
No, our fees are not included in that.
Does it include yours, Mr. Pettit? On the plans, back when you first had plans, you refused to allow Commissioners Neesmith and Ward to view the plans down at the city center, where they were for permitting. Will the new plans be available to commissioners and the public other than the items that are protected by state law?
We'll have them on display.
I think I'm asking them, thank you.
We'll have them on display.
You will allow them to be,
The county will have those on display.
okay? Will you also provide the specifications with that?
Yes, they'll be printed with the plans as well.
Okay, you didn't provide the specs last time, is that correct?
I don't recall. I think we did, but I don't.
Or did you give them to Mr. Britton? He just didn't put them out.
Don't recall.
You don't know whether you gave the specifications, which I'm probably thinking is
Well,
huge.
I would assume that we did, since that's part of the construction documents. I would assume
Yeah.
all of it was given, but I can't.
Okay, well, it was not available to the public, it was not out on the desk. On the cost estimates, have you made a series of estimates through, say, starting in May of 2020 when you first came up with this concept? Each of you, I'll go start with Mr.
There's been independent cost estimates done at each phase of the design.
Mhm.
There was one done at the schematic design phase, there was one done at the design development phase, and then another at the construction document.
Mhm.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that pretty, well, of course, you were out of it during,
Our company also ran an estimate at the 95% range, which is right at the end of the DD, starting to the construction.
who did you provide your estimates to?
I'm sure it was maybe written.
Okay,
We made presentations here.
you have the copies of the estimates they gave?
I've got what was presented here to the commission.
Do you have what they gave you?
They didn't, I don't have a hard copy of them.
Did you give written estimates to him, Mr. Pace?
My last name's Payne.
I'm sorry, Penny.
So, it was probably transferred via electronic, I would assume.
Okay, but you gave, I mean, that's written,
Yeah, I mean, like, it's a deliverable, just like the documents are.
Okay.
It would have been part of the deliverable.
Mr. Pettit, did you deliver estimates to Mr. Britton?
Do not recall.
Who did you give them
Well,
to?
we showed up in a meeting presentation, went over a bunch of numbers with METs, which is their consultant, estimate consultant, and we compared those estimates. And
Okay.
came up with that.
Okay, you, on your website and in this News Sentinel and in the Tribune, there's an advertisement that you're seeking pre-qualification. Where do people go to get that pre-qualification submission form? I'll give it to Mr. Payne.
I believe the county's listed it on their website. I know we've listed it on our website, and John listed it anywhere else as well. I know of those two places.
Okay, you listed that you were having pre-qualifications, and Mr. Britton, I'll let you answer this one. When are they due? July 14th, Wednesday, unless your website's wrong, and unless your website's wrong. Actually, you don't have it on your website. You just have advertisement for bids or advertisement for pre-qualification.
It should be on our website.
Pardon?
It should be on our website.
It should be. You're absolutely right. You know how many times I've been screenshotting it for the past since June
I have
30th?
no idea what you did, but I'm sorry. But
You don't have any forms.
Okay, I'll double check that when I get back to it.
And they're due Tuesday, they're due Wednesday.
They've been given to the ones I know about.
Here.
But it's been listed publicly.
Did you have any direct conversations with Sheriff Jarnigan during this process? Direct conversations?
Personally,
Yes.
no, I did not.
What about you, Mr. Pettit?
Never met him.
Okay. Never met him, okay.
There were some discussions with the sheriff's department during.
I asked them
during
if
the
they
program. This
had.
is not a court hearing, Linda.
This is
You're
not
asking-
your
you
hearing
are
at all. You're the
asking-
moderator.
You
You're
are
not.
asking, you are asking.
Stop the clock.
Making up your time.
You are asking
Stop the clock.
questions. This thing was your idea.
I'm trying to get my questions in, and you, just like
I'm trying to
everybody.
answer your question.
No,
The
you're
sheriff's
trying to tell me
department
what I
was-
can
The sheriff's
ask.
department was involved in the programming.
I didn't ask that. They answered the question. I said, did they contact?
His firm talked to the sheriff.
I asked him if he did. He answered it. Thank you. So I don't need to ask when was the last time you spoke or communicated directly with Sheriff Jarnigan, because you've had no direct communication with Sheriff Jarnigan. Is that correct?
I personally have no communication with Sheriff Jarnigan. I do know that his staff has.
I know the rest. And Mr. Pettit's already said he hasn't even met Sheriff Jarnigan. Do you typically ignore?
Time.
That's good, thank you.
Linda Holden is next.
Hello. My question is, what was the sheriff's opinion of the multi-story design? And what did he tell you his preference was? Did he tell you, did you talk to him and ask him? Why not?
Never met the sheriff. He was out of the picture when I came.
Did you, Mr. Britton?
The sheriff delegated his involvement in the design to the chief deputy, the jail administrator, and the two assistant administrators.
Thank you. Okay. Back in the late 2019, Sheriff Jarnigan posted that a wagon wheel design was his design, was his preference. Did Sheriff Jarnigan tell you that? Any of you, anyone, including you, Mr. Britton?
I can't remember when he told us. If he, it was communicated,
That's
either
good.
by Facebook or you guys, or it was communicated. But I don't know if I heard it directly from him.
Okay. Sheriff Jarnigan said a wagon wheel design costs less to build. I heard him say that because I was in the meeting. It's safer and requires less staff. If you think he is wrong, please explain to me why you think he's wrong.
The design is wagon wheel, except instead of side by side, it's on, they're stacked on top. It's the same design. You have a control booth in the center, and you have housing units around the control booth. That's the wagon wheel concept. There's 3 levels of it. It's the same.
Same?
It's the same.
Then why would you say 3 or 4 story high? And then if a fire or a flood come, wouldn't it be harder for the people to get out and come down the stairs?
Yeah, let me, I think we've addressed this in the previous meeting before, but I'll
Probably have.
I'll address it again. Jails do not operate like other buildings in a fire situation. You don't evacuate people from a jail just because the fire alarm goes off. It is a very controlled egress. If there's, heaven forbid, there's an event in any jail, not just Hamilton County, but if there's a fire event in any jail, inmates are moved from one housing pod to the next, to the next, to the next in a controlled fashion during the event of a fire. You don't evacuate inmates to the yard because you can't
And you don't take them down the steps? You don't take them down the steps either?
You possibly can to move them from one floor to the other if necessary. So the idea would be that they would move from pod like A to pod B, C, D, E on one floor, and then if the fire is still not contained on that floor, they would move to another floor. That's how you egress a facility of this nature.
Okay, thank you for answering
Sure.
that. Do you typically ignore sheriffs when designing jails that the sheriff is charged with operating? Did you ignore Mr. Jonigan?
We did not ignore Sheriff Jernigan, and typically sheriffs are involved in the process more so than the sheriff here has been. I know that, I'm assuming Sheriff Jernigan's been invited to all of our design meetings. I know his staff has been represented at all of our design meetings, but he himself has not set foot in any of our design meetings. Again, I assume he has been invited, but again, he has not been. The only time I've seen Sheriff Jernigan has been in these sessions.
Okay. Well, I just want to say, I talked to Sheriff Jonigan myself, and he talked to me. And I liked what he said about the wagon wheel jail. I think he knew what he was talking about. He's been a sheriff for I don't know how many years, but a long time. And I think he was qualified to say what he said and to do what he did. And I think that you probably could have learned from him if you had really sat down with him and talked and made him feel like that he was being listened to. You understand?
Sure. I would have loved to engage with the sheriff, but again, he did not attend any of our meetings.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next is Edna Green.
I'm gonna read you the whole question, and I'm gonna give you an example, because I'm sure I'm not worded it to where it makes sense to you, gentlemen. But thank you for being willing to sit down and talk to us.
Thank you.
Most of us would really like a clear idea, being that we ain't got one before, and that's not proper English. The pilots, the size, the number, the depth, design. Please explain how they were designed originally. When did you realize that changes could be made to save money? How and why, how and by whom you were made aware of changes to reduce cost? And my last portion of that question is really gonna hurt your feelings. It's been on the news, this deal where the condo collapse, for lack of a better. What is to ensure us that if we go with this deal, and as high as you want to make it, that we're not gonna have the same problem in a couple of years, and additional lawsuits, additional life lost, not counting everything else?
Right, you'll have to get me back on course on the questions, but the micropiles were, when I took them off at 95% drawings, is when we started working on how come there's 881 of them, and how come there's 65 foot deep. We went all the way into almost, well, we were in bid time, and we got it, and we actually had to postpone the bid 3 weeks while we redesigned it somewhat, and that was a couple of constructability issues. We had a foundation that had what I call a lug, what professional people in design call a shear key. And it holds the wall up and it keeps it shut from sliding over. And that, a lot of those micropiles were doing that. And we tried to design it to where we could batter it. So that was what we did at prior bid. During that bid, we had input, after the bid came in, we had input from different vendors of micropiles, installers of micropiles. And they came back with some suggestions, and the general contractor came back with suggestions and said, look at a mat slab, and then there's a specialty contractor that does subsurface work, and said, look at a permanent nail wall. That takes your load forces off the wall, that reduces your micropiles both in number and diameter, and that's where we're coming up with the savings. Did I get everything?
You did, but let me throw one other part at you.
Okay, make it easy.
I'm assuming instead of what I call a soil test, for lack of a nicer word, and hopefully I've got it correct.
Yes.
But my understanding, that area was a dump at one time. And if I'm wrong, now's a good time for you boys to correct me. But most dumps, from what I understand from living on a farm, are not solid ground, they're not supported. And from what I was taught as a child up, and boys, I'm a lot older than you boys are. I apologize, but age has its privileges. You have to have a solid foundation.
So
And
these
without that solid foundation,
These micropiles are going to bedrock.
you really think there's bedrock underneath there, darling?
Down there about 45 feet.
I'd like to see that.
I'm not going in the whole week. That's what.
Is that right? I'm prepared to make God, you'll be all right.
The soils exploration firm has drilled down and found bedrock. That's correct. So it's sitting on bedrock. To address your concerns about what happened in Florida, they still haven't determined that yet, but there is I think a pod pedestal garage. You have to maintain your joints. You have to maintain a building, and you just can't ignore not maintaining a building. Now, this building here won't have the maintenance that's required in a salty environment or anything. You still have to cost.
You're gonna have maintenance, I would say.
You still got to do it. It's just like not painting your fascia on your roof. You got to.
All right, let's take it one step further. What kind of maintenance are we talking about for these micropods? Because that's another bill for us to
There's no maintenance
face.
on the micropiles. That's taken care of when you install.
So that will finish it out and it will be there till the Lord comes back. Is that what you're trying to tell me? You got a lot of confidence, darling.
I got a lot of faith.
Well, I hope it's in the right place, okay?
So too.
Thank you.
Barbara Lockhart is next.
Other than the cosmetic changes you were talking about earlier, what other cost savings can you do?
Well, currently we're analyzing a whole lot of different things. We're looking at the way that the electrical is distributed and maybe go with what we call an NC cable. We're currently right now pricing, instead of precast stairs, we're looking at steel, what we call steel pan stairs in the stairs and see if that can save us money. Some other things, we've got to go in depth, like Brian said previously, that we're going to go in depth and really look at what we can do with the mechanical, the heating, and the air conditioning, and make sure that when we do decide something like that, that it makes sense 10 years from now, and 15 years from now. It don't cost us in the front end, and it saves us a lot of money now, but later you don't save that money because it costs too much to operate it. So that's the things we're looking at right now. And that list is grown, and since bid day, and it's continued to grow, and it's continued to be refined. So we're trying our best to try to make sure that it's economical, where it still makes sense.
One other thing, I still do not understand how this 3-4-story jail is safer than a 1-story jail. Explain that to me.
Well, where to begin on that? So I also want to clarify something that I heard earlier too, that we have studied multiple versions of this building on this site. And frankly, early on in the project, we determined early on that a one-story version of the building would not fit on the limitations of that site and give you what you needed in terms of bed count, justice facility, parking, all the stuff that goes with other than just a building too. So all that was looked at, and there were multiple versions of plans that were iterations done. As far as safety goes, I think we've explained this in a previous meeting before. Each floor level is kind of acting independently of one another. You have a control station in the center of the floor, and that control room has view to each one of the pods on that floor. So it's acting in essence. Each floor is acting like a single-story building. So you just have multiple floors of that. As far as things like fire and stuff like that, all of your stair towers are rated, your elevator shafts are rated. Those are required by code. You have to do that. So the building is fully sprinklered. The building is steel and concrete construction. So I feel like the building is an extremely safe building type. We've already reviewed the building with Tennessee Corrections Institute. They have signed off on the building. They surely would not sign off on the building if it was unsafe. We've already had the building reviewed by the Tennessee State Fire Marshal's office. They've approved the building. So again, these agencies who are responsible for reviewing these plans for life safety and inmate safety have reviewed the plans, and they are in agreement that the building is safe. I guess is the best way to say it. I don't know if there's a different way of saying that, but it's a safe design.
Okay, with a lot of the COVID changes, and the bail suits that's going on, are we really going to need 621 beds?
The size of the facility was, it was recommended in two different studies. One done in 2014 by Carter Goebel Lee. It suggested 655 beds. And then Todd Davis of Moseley did another study in 2017, and it was 625, right around there. So there were two studies done. Now, as far as I've talked to Judge Collins a couple of times about the bail hearings and what's that causing, and what he's finding so far is that many of the folks that are coming to his court for the bail hearings have been out on bail. They reoffended, and during the hearings, the DA's office asked for their bail to be revoked because they reoffended, so they're back in jail. So our jail population has grown from March to this month. Gradually, I've got a chart. I can show you just what it's been over the last 4 months. But Judge Collins described today's population, which was around 250, as a starting point as the courts ramp up.
Okay, thank you.
See Chris Black?
All right, guys. I'll just start this off just very quickly because I've got a few questions for you. First of all, quick poll with the county commission, including Mayor Britton. All of you guys live in the county, right? You have to in order to serve, correct? Mayor Britton, you still live up by John Hay. You're not living in Granger County, as some people like to paint that out to be. All right, so the argument here, would you not agree that you guys don't have some skin in the game, some hiding money as far as paying for this? Wouldn't y'all say that's a bit ridiculous? We all do. All right. My other question for you, Brian, you're with Moseley, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, you guys did the RSW Regional Jail proposal in Front Royal, Virginia, about 8 years ago. You also were involved in the Guilford County, North Carolina, over in Greensboro Jail. Both populations served up in Front Royal, about 200,000 population. Guilford County right at 300,000, correct? The Guilford County proposal is very similar to what you're proposing for Hamilton County in design, correct?
Guilford County was a multi-story facility, yes, sir.
Absolutely. All right, that's working well for Guilford County.
Both of those facilities were done prior to my time at Moseley.
But both of those facilities, by all recollection, by all media reports, are serving those communities well, correct?
As far as I know, yes, sir.
Absolutely. And I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with these two, but Hancock County Jail in Mississippi, Harrison County Jail in Mississippi, both serving populations of anywhere from 150,000 to 300,000 single-level jails built within the last 15 years. Those have had numerous issues, from foundational issues, things of that nature. So a single-story jail, in some instances, will not work, correct? It's just not the best investment. Is that correct from your studies?
I'm sorry, say the question.
Okay, my question basically is, single-story jails, in some instances, if built within the last 10 to 15 years, if done, what do they call that, budget-based engineering, something along those lines, that doesn't necessarily solve the problem compared to the proposal that you guys are working with, correct?
Well, I think any building could have potential failures depending on, a number of factors. It could, certainly design could be part of that. Installation, shoddy installation could be part of that. There's a myriad of factors.
I follow what you're putting down. All right. When it comes to the sheriff of Hamilton County, this is the same sheriff who said that you need a gun and an alarm and a big dog on WAT, WBIR, and WVLT within the last 7 years if you want to be safe in our county. Would you not agree, Bill, we've talked about it a few times, that Sheriff Jarnigan was asked to participate in this process, has been asked to participate in this process, and every time he would rather sit around and bicker or pass it off to Chad Mullins to do that job? From your observation personally.
What I can say is he delegated his involvement to staff.
Absolutely. Now I've been asked, what does that got to do with it? Would you not agree that a sheriff who complains about something, who is tasked with the facility or the upkeep of the facility that we are looking at, should be involved rather than play petty political games? Would you not agree with that, Mayor? If you were in his position, wouldn't you want to be involved?
That's his choice.
Understandable. I understand you can't talk bad about the sheriff, and I wouldn't want to. My final question is for you, Bill, and for you, Jim. Do you mind if I go trick-or-treating with y'all this Halloween? Because apparently you guys are worse than the Grim Reaper in this county. Thank you.
Okay, go back through the list, Karen, you have more questions?
Yes, I do. Where you were talking about, for the number of beds and everything, that we don't have the area. How many acres are, with everything that was bought surrounding, what's the total acreage? What's the
It's
total
10 to
acreage?
12, in the neighborhood of 10 to 12 acres, I believe.
10 to 12 acres. Well, Coffee County is on 10 acres. They answered that. Okay, so you've got the same acreage, so I don't see how you can say it won't work. Okay. And if I can can I show you this, where you said that what they've got, I thought I was skiing. What they've got basically designed, right? And 3 floors of this, correct?
Correct.
How do you sit here just a few minutes ago and say it's the exact same thing as a wagon wheel? I've been to Coffee
See,
County.
I have too. Now see the control tower?
I do.
See how it's in
I'm
the
saying-
center? But see how it's in the center of all the housing?
But, and look, on the outside for 3 floors, or however much square, that's empty, wasted space that could be utilized for building, correct? If you were optimizing the vast of what area you've got to work with, where you've got this big T right here with the 2 long legs, plus showed this to the sheriff of Coffee County, who said there is no way in heck, doesn't care about where this is sitting right here in the middle with a long hallway each direction. He would never want that situation. You see how that right there in the 360-degree circle, where who's in the control tower, you got a heck of a lot more view than looking down these 2 long hallways, correct? Do you agree?
We have analyzed the sightlines in the design, and you can see the entire housing plot in the design.
You can see it, but it's not, to me, it's not as clear. And you're dealing, you said 10 to 12 acres, because that is one of the questions I asked for comparison at Coffee County. And Coffee County is occupying a little bit short of 10 acres. Thank you.
Carol Arwood?
designing and all that. Why don't you give us some idea of when these deals have been in for and the project was put out to bid and hey, we've got a contractor here, here's the number, we're gonna build it for this. How many of your projects have came in under budget? And how many of them have way exceeded their budget? That final number when you put it out?
To be honest with you, my experience in this industry in, I think, 28 years now that I've been doing this is a rarity, to be honest. This far, a rarity, this far over budget, in my personal experience is a rarity. I remember the first jail I did in 2007, we were 20 million under budget on that one. So it's very much reverse of the situation that you guys have here. So it happens, yes, it happens, but I would say in my personal experience, it's atypical from what we usually have. If a project is over budget, it's usually much less over budget than this one is in the way we currently have it. Again, I think, this has been stated before, I think it's a lot of it is a reflection of the economy. And just the craziness that happened because of COVID and the stuff happening afterwards. The cost of construction just got crazy. And we were just unfortunate at the time we bid it, I think, and kind of suffered from that craziness going on. Is why it's so far, excuse me, if that makes sense. Is that fair to say?
You admit this project here is way over budget, as you expected.
Certainly.
And Mr. Doty said we're going to talk about how cost of materials is starting to come down. Free market, you're not going to tolerate this, it's going to come down. Why do you not see a sense then in delaying for even possibly 3 months? Let's see if it comes down. Let's see what kind of trend we get. I mean, wouldn't that make sense?
Well, so it's not my decision to make first.
I
It's the
understand
county's
that, but
decision.
actually your opinion.
My opinion is it could go up in that 3 months, the same as it could go down. You just don't know. And that was my statement. I don't have a crystal ball and I can't predict what's going to happen in those 3 months. So you could be right, and I absolutely hope you are, that the cost of construction does come down in those 3 months. But, again, we could both be wrong. So, I don't know. Likely, and or maybe I'm overstating here, normally first of the year you see a cost increase in construction, typically. So in my personal opinion, you might be better off trying to rebid it before the first of the year typical cost increases that you see. I don't know if you've got more to say to that, but I mean, that's my opinion.
This is not typical times. This is unprecedented times. I've never seen inflation.
I know it's very much.
What's going on in the construction market right now. And yeah, the futures for the lumber have come down. We haven't seen that at Home Depot and Lowe's yet. You still gonna pay $33 for a 1/4 inch piece of OSB right now, 1/4 inch. So that's crazy. But steel's still up there. It's worrisome right now that you can't even get it. And so we've got to have the demand back. And the reason you hit a lot of projects in 2007, 2008, 2009, well, we had the recession going on, and things were available, and that allows you to do that. Right now, your money's cheap, but your materials are high. So, what I fear, and we can't tell if it's going to go up or go down. We hope it goes down because it's got to help the owners that's trying to build stuff. We need it to help. So we hope that that goes down and inflation doesn't increase the cost of the money to build. So there's two sides of that. So you got to think about both sides. So I'm not sure I answered your question, but it's just fortune telling.
It is a gamble.
Yeah.
I understand that. But this is our money. We should be allowed to make that decision how we're going to gamble with it. Not right here at this table. Because it's our bucks, not yours. And we, over here, see it delayed for 2 or 3 months and see if we can get cost reductions. Because, I mean, you yourself admitted this project is way overestimated. And the mayor even stood right here at this podium and says $95 million, which is well over what you said or the numbers you threw out. Okay.
Time's expired. Bonnie Bullington?
Thank you. I'd like to talk about the elevators for this jail. Why is it only one company is qualified to do these?
You want me to go there? Here, I got it from a general contractor. After the bids, I went and met and said, what's some ideas, how do we value engineer this thing, which is the term to make sure that we don't just mess it up when we try to take money out of it. One of the things that he complained about, really, because I messed up his vacation when I delayed the project for bidding, but he complained about the elevators, and only one elevator company bid. So then we dug into that. Brian does have 3 or 4 approved elevator companies to bid the project. When you get into it, we think, we're not sure yet, we're still trying to figure that out. We think it's in the controls. So he's talked about, Brian's talked about how safe it is with that elevator, and it's not the other 2 elevators that's over in the Justice Center. It's the main elevator that has 2 shafts and 2 elevators, and it's got to be controlled from the control tower. So what one elevator guy told me was the way the controls are listed, he did not want to fool with it. So what we have to do is make sure that it's still safe when it operates by the controls, and we allow those other 3 elevator companies to bid it by not trying to, something in the language to prioritize that security system. Because that elevator's got to mesh with the security system, and that's where the problem is. And I can't be more specific than that because I'm still trying to find out.
So this is considered a proprietary elevator, is that?
No, we don't consider it proprietary estimator.
What is a proprietary?
When you say this is the elevator and this is what it's going to cost. And I suspect that one elevator company knew he was the only one bid.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Linda Noy?
I'll start with you, Mr. Payne. Have you had any written communications with Mayor Britton since May 1st?
Possibly, I don't know, maybe. I don't have
How often do
access
you
to
give him information or an update?
We at least call each other probably once a week, kind of let him know what's going on, at least once a week, maybe every other week.
So you're doing a lot by phone rather than fax and email and letters? Okay. Same question for you, Mr. Pettit.
Same answer, basically.
You don't typically send emails to Mr. Britton?
Not unless it's a Zoom meeting or something like that, so,
Have you had Zoom meetings since May 1st?
yes. Well, you and I have, no, I don't reckon I've had a Zoom meeting with it. I can't recall.
Do you recall?
Not that I recall, I know Tony and I have had, because going through this VE process, we've
Okay.
been communicating.
Same question, any written communications with Commissioner Shipley? Any phone calls with Mr. Shipley? Okay, what about Tim Horner, jail? Okay,
I've had written communication. I guess I answered back to the committee with some questions that Commissioner Naismith sent me.
okay. At one time, Mayor Britton said, I think it was 180,000 was too large. I'd have to go back and look at the exact quote, and you were going to go back and, I think this is before you maybe, but you were going to go back and look at 160,000 square feet. Do you recall any of that?
Not right off the top of my head.
Okay. But now we have how many square feet?
I don't recall exactly what.
Sound like 199,000?
Right at 200,000.
Yeah, right.
Okay. This started as a jail problem, and you did present several options back in 2017, is that correct?
I personally did not.
Well,
Our company
confirmed,
did, yes.
okay. When and how was a new justice center added to this?
Probably in 2019, something like that.
As a result of what? What caused you to add a justice center to this?
That was part of the conversations we've had with the county of what they wanted to add.
Conversations you've had with whom?
The county staff.
This is that committee that you all meet,
Oh,
like Ms. Laws and others, is that what you're talking about, or with Mr. Britton? Who's the county staff?
They were all involved with those
Okay.
meetings, yes, ma'am.
Do you recall some of the members of that group? Was Teresa Laws on it?
Teresa was, Gino was there,
Was the maintenance person?
Terry was involved, Mayor Brett was, who else has been involved in it?
and me, the judges.
Mhm.
Yeah, the judges have been involved in the.
What about former Commissioner Scotty Long?
Scotty was involved early on in the project, yes, before
When
he
he was the
when
commissioner.
he was commissioner, yes.
Okay. During your meetings with either with that group or with anyone, have you ever talked about taking federal prisoners in,
Not that I recall.
Mr. Pettit?
I don't know anything about federal prisoners.
Well, I'm just saying, have you ever talked about it in context of jail?
45 beds and it's cost too much.
Mayor Britton, have you ever talked with anybody about any conversations about taking in more state prisoners, Mr. Payne?
I would say that the only statement ever said is that could be an option if you build extra beds.
Mhm.
But as whether or not the county was actually going to do that or not, there was never a conversation of that nature.
Right. Same, Mr. Pettit, any conversations about taking in state prisoners or more state prisoners?
No, I mean, no, I don't think so. I mean,
Mr. Britton, I'll let you answer one.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Permission. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
that.
You're
Golly,
welcome.
fine, I've got permission. No, not more than what we would in a normal process, as far as normal operation. There's never been any discussion to try to finance operations or finance the project by housing either state or federal prison, if that's the point you're trying to make.
And the only state prisoners we take in now are the ones that the DA runs the split confinement deal with, is that correct?
Whatever generates from our court system. I don't know about split confinement or anything like that, but as far as taking, we might from time to time swap prisoners with another county, but we don't go solicit state prisoners. We don't do that.
Thank you.
Okay, from Holden.
I don't have any more questions, I'm just listening.
Okay, Edna Green.
Thank you, Darrell. I don't want to waste any time. First question, you had said there wasn't enough room over there out. If you had built only a jail, which is what we need, and I'll be the first one to tell you, we need no jail. I've been downstairs to get paperwork signed. That place is bad, okay? But if it had only been a jail, could you have built it there? Or whatever, I'd love to hear you do it.
Some of the early studies were just a jail, and we did analyze just a jail on that site. We analyzed multiple versions of just a jail on that site, and they would not fit in a one-story configuration.
A one-story jail on 12 acres would not fit.
From
Just a
what I-
jail now, I'm not talking about nothing else. I'm not talking about your courtrooms, I'm not talking about places for, oh, I apologize. Places for your judges to stay. I'm talking about
I think at
nothing
the
but
time
a
we were
basic jail.
At the time we were studying that, I think the county had not acquired the additional property across, what's that road? Allison Street. I think at the time we were studying that, that was the case.
Okay. Next question, and then unfortunately, this is gonna hit Mr. Britton, so I apologize to you. What do you propose to do with the inmates? Being that if I understand correctly, they can't be in there when you're building, by what I understand, and if I'm wrong, now's the time for you to correct me, and I'll take it easy today. So what are you gonna do with your prisoners?
They're gonna stay there. They're gonna stay in jail, in the present jail.
Even though you're building them,
Yes.
okay? Good, good
I
answer.
think,
How many do we have now?
Today we had 248.
Is that the lowest we've had in some time?
No.
It's been lower than that?
Yes.
How low?
Probably during the peak of COVID, 200 less.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you, Darwin.
No, I was trying to clarify that jail's staying while you build the new detention and justice center. So they stay here until you're ready to occupy here. And you got to certify with PCI and all that.
When you were talking about how safe the 3-story, 4-story / whatever it is, if I remember correctly, Yun's had a stage 4 cancer person in there. And I don't know how familiar you two folks are with that, but I went through that with a family member. Let's say that man's on 4th floor and fire breaks up. How you gonna get him safely down without the lawsuit having a life or death lawsuit filing against him?
So, yeah, we have a medical bed on the lowest level of the building. So I would assume, again, this is a management issue of the jail, not a design issue.
Okay. But you're talking about how safe it is, and I don't mean this the wrong way, but if I put you on the 3rd floor and I set the bottom on fire with gasoline, you really think you got a chance of getting out?
If I'm an inmate, I have no chance of getting out because it's a controlled egress.
Yeah.
So that's how that works. I don't go to the stairs like I do in this building to get out of the building. That's not how an inmate, that's not how you manage inmates in a fire situation. But we do have a medical area with holding cells on the lowest level of the building. And I would assume if I were managing the jail, but I'm not, that someone with a serious condition such as what you're describing would either be housed in that or they would be housed at an off-site facility with more specialized needs for that individual. Again, that's a management issue that I can't necessarily speak to how they would do that.
There's a medical room on each floor.
There
I'm
is.
sorry, speak up.
I'm sorry, there is a medical room on each floor.
Okay.
So, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Barbara Lockhart. Okay, Chris Black.
Just a couple more, guys. You're an architect, you're a man in building. We've heard about the Surfside incident a few times in this meeting today, even though that's completely irrelevant to what you're doing, but nonetheless, if we use the logic that they're using tonight about multi-level buildings, should any multi-level building in this country ever be built again? I mean, that seems to be the logic that they want to use, you know, don't build a multi-level jail, Surfside could happen. When's the last time a building collapsed in Hamlin County? I don't reckon you guys know that. Bill, do you recount the last time a building's collapsed? Morristown Hamlin's 4 floors and full of all kinds of sick people. It's not collapsed. All right. And then on jail capacity, you mentioned, what was it, 200 and how many are in jail today?
248.
248. What percentage of capacity is that, Bill? Are you familiar with that, or?
90, the capacity's 255.
255, all right. Well, looking at TDOC reports from May 2021, we were sitting at 105.1% capacity, 9% TDOC felons, 58.2% pretrial detainment. So would you not agree that rather than a state prisoner issue, we've got an issue with pretrial detainment that we might want to look at first? I mean, does that not seem, we keep hearing people gripe about housing state inmates and the potential of housing federal inmates. Doesn't it seem like pretrial detainment's our bigger issue, and maybe our DA, you might want to look at doing a little something about that? Does that not seem like the bigger issue? As far as our inmate problem?
That's one issue that could be addressed through legislation, and but our system is following the law.
But that legislation is out of your guys' hands. That's national, correct?
Correct.
Those fine people 200 miles down the road that don't give a darn about what happens in Hamlin County 9 times out of 10. God bless Rick Eldridge's heart. But I guess that's all I've got. Thank y'all for having this tonight. I truly do appreciate it.
See, we got less than 2 minutes left. Karen, you have another question?
No, I
Daryl?
didn't realize I was rolling back around.
Bonnie?
No, I just like to thank everyone for their participation.
Linda?
Sure.
you keep updating, of course, your plans and things like that. Do you think we should update our needs assessment?
I didn't do the needs assessment, I can't speak to that, but I think that is something that could be done if the county chooses to do that.
Are you aware we have a jail bail lawsuit dealing with pretrial detention?
I personally am not aware of that.
Mr. Pettit, are you aware of that?
I don't even know what that means.
Oh, my goodness. It means we're putting people in jail that
Concrete block and how to do everything, so
you just know how to keep them in.
stay out of jail, is what I try to
As
do.
you
Well, that is what I'm getting at. We have a lawsuit that says we are detaining people rather than letting them go out on bail and citing them to court, and that's part of our overcrowding problem. That's why another needs assessment. We love to update things, you know, oh, let's get the latest information. That would be a good thing, Commission. Find out. As well as find out what's the comparison between a one-level jail, and you're right, back in, when you first made those estimates, we didn't have 10 acres. We went on a buying frenzy, and you know what, that just makes it all the more possible to do 3 one-level pods for safety, staffing, and cost. Thank you.
All right, that'll conclude the question and answer session. Thank you for participating.